Are you ready, Denise? Okay. Good evening, everyone. This is the Planning Committee meeting of the Contra Costa Transportation Authority, and we will convene the meeting. Note that all members are present, and the members are myself, Janet Abelson, Kevin Romick, Dave Durant, Dave Hudson, and Karen Mitchoff. We'll go first to item B, which is public comment on items not on the agenda. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak at this time on items not on the agenda? Okay, not seeing any. We will move on to item C, which is approval of minutes. Okay. Motion by Dave Hudson, seconded by Karen Mitchoff. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. With that, we'll move on to the consent calendar. Items 1, 2, and 3.
Move approval.
Okay, there's a motion by Kevin Romick, seconded by Dave Hudson. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. With that, we will go to item number 4, our regular agenda, and that's the approval to distribute the final Measure J calendar year 2014-15 Growth Management Program compliance checklist for allocation of fiscal year 2015-16 and 2016-17 in local street maintenance and improvement funds. Is there a staff report?
Yes, there is. Thank you, Madam Chair. Sorry for the wordy title there.
It was.
As you probably know, the Growth Management Program Compliance Checklist is a requirement under the Measure J Growth Management Program. It requires all 19 jurisdictions in the county to fill out a checklist in order to receive their 18% return to source funds for local streets and roads maintenance. As you may remember, last month we came to you with a proposal for the calendar year 2014 and 2015 checklists. We did propose a new addition to the checklist, which was the requirement that the jurisdictions fill out a audit reporting form, which basically details what funds were expended and on what. So we have a better idea of exactly what Measure J return to source funds were spent on. And you approved that, the board approved that last month. So now we are prepared to release the growth GMP compliance checklist to the jurisdictions. And that's why we're here tonight, to seek your approval for the distribution of the checklist with the additional items. So there were 11 items. Now there are 12 items on the checklist, and we'd like to get that out to the jurisdictions. They can start submitting their checklists starting April 1st. Starting July 1st, we can start cutting checks for the first fiscal year. The off year would then come a year after their submittal.
Okay. Are there any comments, questions from the members of the committee? Okay. Okay. Are there any comments from the audience? I don't have any speaker slips. Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll move to distribute the checklist to the local jurisdictions.
Okay. Okay. Motion by Dave Hudson, seconded by Dave Durant. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Any abstention? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Was there something, somebody trying to say something? Okay. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item number 5, which is an update on the upcoming One Bay Area, or OBAG 2, and Measure J call for projects. Is there a report?
Good evening, Madam Chair. Martin Engelman, Deputy Executive Director for Planning. And good evening, board members. Happy New Year. So MTC has approved a resolution which allocates $51 million to Contra Costa for the One Bay Area Grant Program. And we've been through this once before. There was the first OBAG cycle a few years back, and now we're going to go through it once again. This time around, the federal funds are coming for fiscal 17 to 18 through fiscal 22. So it is it's 5 years of revenues. And the MTC Resolution 4202, which was adopted late last year, identifies specific amounts for certain types of projects. So we get $51 million. That's actually more than we got in the last cycle. That's good news. Last time, I think we got about $47 million, I think. So there are specific projects identified. For example, a portion of the funds go to Safe Routes to School. A portion of the funds go to the county's rural roads, which they call in here Federal Aid Secondary. And then a portion of the funds have to go to planning and outreach. This is federal money. It comes from two programs. One is Surface Transportation Program. The other is Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality. And there are limitations, again, on the color of money. We can use the Surface Transportation Program funds to do local street improvements, but we can't use CMAQ funds for local street improvements. So CMAQ funds have to be aimed at projects that help reduce congestion or mitigate air quality. The MTC's already set forth some rules in their resolution. For example, there's a minimum grant request of $500,000, and there's a matching requirement. This is federal money. There's 11.47 matching requirement, so that brings the minimum project size to $565,000. There are requirements that a certain percentage of the funds be expended in so-called priority development areas, or projects that provide access to priority development areas. So for Contra Costa, 70% of the funds have to be expended on projects that are either in PDAs or serve PDAs. There's some new requirements. Requirement for complete streets, that a local jurisdiction adopt a resolution for complete streets or update their general plan to address the treatment of bicycles and pedestrians with all street revisions. And at present, there were 4 local jurisdictions that had not updated their general plan. Now there are 3, and we are working with those 3 jurisdictions to make sure that they meet this requirement, which actually doesn't have to be met for another year when the funds are allocated. There's a requirement that all jurisdictions have a housing element that's been certified by HCD. If that sounds familiar, that was one of the requirements we had back with Measure C. Jurisdictions have to have a certified pavement management program. And this cycle, there is a new requirement that we don't know about yet. It's up and coming, and that is that MTC is going to develop some requirements regarding anti-displacement policies. And so it's likely that when MTC convenes in February, they will adopt a set of policies that require that the congestion management agencies, as they allocate these funds to local jurisdictions, ensure that those cities and towns and the county have adopted anti-displacement policies, which essentially would ensure that people that are living in priority development areas and that have affordable housing in priority developments aren't displaced by new developments that come in, and they can be much more expensive if they're new, of course. And we want to protect those residents that are already in the PDA. We did this last time, and we did receive some criticism about the timing, that it was rushed, that we didn't give the jurisdictions enough time. to fill out the forms, that it was rushed to go through the process of doing the evaluation. So we really want to get a jump start on this, an early start, and so we're proposing that this month we release this paper that you have in your packet to all interested parties, and it explains not only the OBAG 2, but also the Measure J call for projects, because we're also entering into another cycle of Measure J for transportation for livable communities and pedestrian, bike, and trail facilities projects. Measure J allocates 5% of our gross revenues to TLC and 1.5% to pedestrian and trails. And that's usually a 5-year cycle that we look at. So we're trying to consolidate this and have one call for projects, hopefully one form that everybody can fill out. We want to develop a synergy between the federal money, which requires a local match, and allow jurisdictions to use our local Measure J money to fund the federal projects. That's allowable. The RTPCs are very much involved because Measure J specifically states that the regional transportation planning committees will decide where their TLC funds go. So we will, tell the RTPCs how much each of them get and ask them to start looking at projects and try to meld the two together. Because of the different colors of money and because of the MTC requirements, we cannot bring the criteria together. There's going to be a separate set of criteria for the OBAG compared to the Measure C TLC program. But we are going to do our best to consolidate the programs together. We have gone to our technical coordinating committee on this, and we have asked them to form a subcommittee. The subcommittee's met once already to look at ways that we can bring these two programs together, and they're going to meet again, I think, shortly. So tonight we're asking your approval to distribute this out early and often to the RTPCs, transit providers, local jurisdictions, and non-governmental organizations so that they can start to get into this, all this information. And it's quite a bit of information. You'll see that it's 100 pages of information here, including the MTC resolution. In the back, you'll see a checklist, which may remind you of the Growth Management Program checklist, and that's because we helped MTC develop this checklist and suggested they use it to determine the compliance for the congestion management agencies and the local jurisdictions in adhering to the MTC policies. So with that, I'll conclude my report and ask for your approval to distribute this out.
Are there any comments from the committee? Yes. Dave?
On page 5 of 5, Martin, you've got the halfway down, the authority is interested in hearing from you about, and then you have 3 bullets. You're not interested in hearing from us tonight, are you? This is going out to the RTPCs or interested parties, or?
That's correct.
Okay.
The audience here is the RTPCs.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I think, I don't know if the authority, didn't we kind of take a position that on the anti-displacement, we're waiting to hear from MTC or on what their rules are going to come down. But if we hear from the RTPCs, we should know by then. The second part was 5 of 9. Page 6 is at the top of the page. And if you look down at particularly 4 and 5, I'm not sure what the planning healthy places are, and I'm on the air district. Maybe I ought to find out what they are. But on number 5 in particular, it's one of the things that has really bugged me, that when you send this out to the RTPCs, can you notify the cities that are in the RTPC that it does pertain to? I don't think Concord knows. I've been telling them for years that they're in a care area. Pittsburgh was in there. San Ramon is now in one episodic zone. So it's kind of like, be aware of this, find out that you're in line to get something if you just apply, that kind of stuff.
Madam Chair, I sit on the Air Board, and that's a question I've asked. And I understand that when these grant opportunities go out, they do a lot of outreach to the cities. Well, you were there. Yeah. When I asked that question. Hello. So, and we got an email that showed that they were, so we can only keep trying to highlight it.
Just another opportunity to be a GF. If they're not yet.
I have a, oh, go ahead. Anybody else with a question up here? I have a question on the displacement. I don't know if anyone knows the answer, but this is the displacement they're talking about being concerned about from the actual residence where a person might be living at that time, or is it from the area? So, if, for example, if another housing unit could be located for that person in the priority development area, I think it is, right? Would that suffice? At a price that's reasonable, of
I
course.
can try to answer that question. We have very little information at this point about the displacement policies. I did see a presentation by ABAC staff on the concerns, and I think the mitigations, from what I can tell, I think the mitigations will include just what you said, that is that you have a policy that would help those who are in affordable housing in a PDA if they're being displaced, that they have another place to live where they can still enjoy the benefits of having an affordable rent. So I believe that will be one of the policies.
And would it be
have
in
a
the
way to
PDA?
mitigate it,
Do you think?
Pardon?
In the PDA?
And I imagine it would be within the PDA. I don't know for a fact, though.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, any more questions from the committee? Okay, let's see if there are any questions or comments from the audience. Are there? I don't have any speaker slips. Okay, with that, we'll bring it back to the committee. Okay, there's a motion to move the item, which means to release this to the RTPs, right? So the motion was by Karen Mitchoff. The second was, by Dave Hudson. Are we ready to vote? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition, any abstention? Motion carries unanimously. So that brings us to item number 6, which is other business. We actually have no other business. Number 7 is clippings and correspondence. We have none. And so now we are adjourned to our next meeting on February the 3rd. Thank you all for coming. So, right, I'm about to do that. So at this point, we will